fantastic to have you all for our third week, and hopefully we are building a leadership capability. All I hope for is that one or two people could pick out one or two things out each week, which just drives it forward, builds a bit of confidence. Whether anyone's running for elections or not, I'm not sure, but hopefully share the message. And I'm sure as you guys go out into the field and do stuff and share with your work colleagues, everyone's getting that little bit smarter. So that's kind of my wish for that too. I'm just going to welcome Ursula along there. Ursula's our guest speaker for tonight. Hi, Ursula. How you doing? And she's got some awesome stories to tell us a little bit later on. So we're just going to dive into a few things to see where we're up to. I do apologise. I'm not totally 100% fit tonight. So I've planned a bit of video time for us, which will take a bit of load off my voice. And then we're going to talk about values, decision-making, and the concept of growth and fixed mindset, which are really interesting in the context of leadership and potentially about what's sort of holding some people back, I guess, or some places back, maybe in terms of doing that as well. So we just want to kick off with a little bit of that homework stuff we talked about last week. How's everyone going with their curiosity? Is that working out well for people? Are we being more curious than normal, possibly? A little bit less judgy in terms of what's going on? Has anyone had any good experiences around being more curious instead of just diving straight into, judging or stereotyping or anything like that?
I've just been trying really hard to be more curious with just little discussions that I have with staff at work, and just trying to sort of be a bit more open and not quite so closed up. Yeah,
Cool.
it
And
seems
that's
to be
a little
going
bit of
quite
an
well.
investment in time, but hopefully you're maybe uncovering a few things and the solutions come up a little bit easier, maybe, or people
Yeah,
feel more part of the team, I would hope, on that front as well.
yeah, and I want them to think that I'm approachable, but sometimes I think I'm just a bit short with them because I'm busy or whatever. Yeah, where I just feel like I need to be a bit more open.
True enough. And
Yeah,
we all are, we're all time poor. That's like it's the way life is built a little bit at the moment, which is a bit crazy for us.
Mhm.
But it's certainly one of the investments that you need to make to step back and grab the stuff that is meaningful to you and where you can help and assist people and make that work out. It's just not doing it's not a great excuse. Last week I left you with this grid as well, and I've just populated it with some of the strengths that came out of the personality quiz that we did last week, and also the EQ piece that we did. And yeah, they're just in there. Hopefully each of you have got something like this as well, just to think about how you're working forward, what's going on with that, how you can leverage those for better outcomes. And certainly today, because I was feeling a bit off color, my enthusiasm, I did another class earlier today, got me through a little bit because I was being more enthusiastic, and the class really enjoyed the time at the end of the day as well. So that's just one example of me working hard to kind of leverage that under probably less than perfect conditions as it would be as well. Things that I need to continue working on, and it comes up from time to time, being a little unfocused, a bit disorganized as well. They certainly would be issues for me, but nevertheless, things are coming together and we're working forward and getting some good outcomes for things as well. So across this course, you should be just populating this with bits and pieces that come up. I will add another box there for this next week about your values, which is what we're going to talk about in a little while. And that is also just a pivotal thing in terms of how you, I don't know, progress through the day, how you get things, how you don't feel your values getting trampled on. And that's a real problem for us all. And that brings out less than perfect behavior maybe in that case. So we'll dig into that as well. This is my leadership slide, which I just love, the bringing other people up, inspiring other people towards the goal. And that doesn't matter whether it's in your family life, you might bring your family together. It might be about a holiday or a place to go or an activity you want to do. Certainly, in the workplace, we want to get as many people to come along on the ride because it makes it much, much easier to lead and manage if people are excited about that. And lucky for us, we're all smart, learning, clever people, and we have, I guess, strengths that other people don't. So we can try to do more to share that with others along the way. So I was watching the Matildas last night, which was great. Two up on China in their second game against China, and off to the Olympics in Paris after that. And after the second goal, Tony Gustafsson jumped up and did what we call a pride pose. And this is a fascinating piece of, I guess, research by a lady by the name of Amy Cuddy, who is all about body language. She also goes into it, and we're going to watch her video, which goes for about 20 minutes tonight. thinking about fake it till you become it. So it's an interesting kind of philosophy, but what she's doing by pitching that is breaking down the barriers so that you can try things that maybe you would not have tried in your own right. So that's what that's about. So we're going to duck out and watch that, and she'll talk about what the pride pose is about. The pride pose, well, I'll just say as well, is an interesting thing. Whether you're born sighted or blind and you run a physical event and you finish that event and goes, wow, you finished, both sighted and blind people because they've never seen it before, still do this pride pose thing. It's a really fascinating way things unfold, and that exhilaration of winning or competing in an event. And she's got some work on it that talks about how it increases our the chemistry in a good way in our body, and we should probably do it before we do things like presentations or job interviews and things like that. So let's duck out to that screen. It's a TED Talk, and we'll watch that. Just flick straight past it, and just let me know if you can hear that okay, and we'll go through that. And,
life hack. And all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. But before I give it away, I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourselves smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold on to our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I see you. So I want you to pay attention to what you're doing right now. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes, and I'm hoping that if you sort of learn to tweak this a little bit, it could significantly change the way your life unfolds. So we're really fascinated with body language, and we're particularly interested in other people's body language. You know, we're interested in, like, you know, an awkward interaction or a smile or a contemptuous glance or maybe a very awkward wink or maybe even something like a handshake.
Here they are arriving at number 10 and look at this lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Oh, and here comes the Prime Minister of it. No.
So a handshake or the lack of a handshake can have us talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, even the BBC and the New York Times. So obviously, when we think about nonverbal behavior or body language, but we call it nonverbals as social scientists, it's language. So we think about communication. When we think about communication, we think about interactions. So what is your body language communicating to me? What's mine communicating to you? And there's a lot of reason to believe that this is a valid way to look at this. So social scientists have spent a lot of time looking at the effects of our body language or other people's body language on judgments. And we make sweeping judgments and inferences from body language. And those judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes like who we hire or promote, who we ask out on a date. For example, Nalini Ambady, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not that physician will be sued. So it doesn't have to do so much with whether or not that physician was incompetent, but do we like that person and how they interacted? Even more dramatic, Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us that judgments of political candidates' faces in just 1 second predict 70% of US Senate and gubernatorial race outcomes. And even, let's go digital, emoticons used well in online negotiations can lead you to claim more value from that negotiation. If you use them poorly, bad idea, right? So when we think of nonverbals, we think of how we judge others, how they judge us, and what the outcomes are. We tend to forget, though, the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbals, and that's ourselves. We are also influenced by our nonverbals, our thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist, I study prejudice, and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they've won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students really exhibit the full range of power nonverbals. So you have people who are like caricatures of alphas, like really coming into the room. They get right into the middle of the room before class even starts, like they really want to occupy space. When they sit down, they're sort of spread out. They raise their hands like this. You have other people who are virtually collapsing when they come in. As soon as they come in, you see it. You see it on their faces and their bodies, and they sit in their chair and they make themselves tiny, and they go like this when they raise their hand. I noticed a couple things about this. One, you're not going to be surprised, it seems to be related to gender. So women are much more likely to do this kind of thing than men. Women feel chronically less powerful than men, so this is not surprising. But the other thing I noticed is that it also seemed to be related to the extent to which the students were participating and how well they were participating. And this is really important in the MBA classroom because participation counts for half the grade. So business schools have been struggling with this gender grade gap. You get these equally qualified women and men coming in, and then you get these differences in grades, and it seems to be partly attributable to participation. So I started to wonder, okay, so you have these people coming in like this, and they're participating. Is it possible that we could get people to fake it, and would it lead them to participate more? So my main collaborator, Dana Carney, who's at Berkeley, and I really wanted to know, can you fake it till you make it? Like, can you do this just for a little while and actually experience a behavioral outcome that makes you seem more powerful? So we know that our nonverbals govern how other people think and feel about us. There's a lot of evidence, but our question really was, do our nonverbals govern how we think and feel about ourselves? There's some evidence that they do. So, for example, when we smile when we feel happy, but also when we're forced to smile by holding a pen in our teeth like this, it makes us feel happy. So it goes both ways. When it comes to power, it also goes both ways. So when you feel powerful, you're more likely to do this, but it's also possible that when you pretend to be powerful, you are more likely to actually feel powerful. So the second question really was, so we know that our minds change our bodies. Is it also true that our bodies change our minds? And when I say minds, in the case of the powerful, what am I talking about? So I'm talking about thoughts and feelings and the sort of physiological things that make up our thoughts and feelings. And in my case, that's hormones. I look at hormones. So what do the minds of the powerful versus the powerless look like? So powerful people tend to be, not surprisingly, more assertive and more confident, more optimistic. They actually feel that they're going to win even at games of chance. They also tend to be able to think more abstractly. So there are a lot of differences. They take more risks. There are a lot of differences between powerful and powerless people. Physiologically, there also are differences on two key hormones, testosterone, which is the dominance hormone, and cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So what we find is that high-power alpha males in primate hierarchies have high testosterone and low cortisol. And powerful and effective leaders also have high testosterone and low cortisol. So what does that mean? When you think about power, people tended to think only about testosterone because that was about dominance. But really, power is also about how you react to stress. So do you want the high power leader that's dominant, high on testosterone, but really stress reactive? Probably not, right? You want the person who's powerful and assertive and dominant, but not very stress reactive, the person who's laid back. So we know that in primate hierarchies, if an alpha needs to take over, if an individual needs to take over an alpha role sort of suddenly, within a few days, that individual's testosterone has gone up significantly and his cortisol has dropped significantly. So we have this evidence, both that the body can shape the mind, at least at the facial level, and also that role changes can shape the mind. So what happens, okay, you take a role change, what happens if you do that at a really minimal level, like this tiny manipulation, this tiny intervention? For 2 minutes you say, I want you to stand like this, and it's going to make you feel more powerful. So this is what we did. We decided to bring people into the lab and run a little experiment. And these people adopted for 2 minutes either high power poses or low power poses. And I'm just going to show you 5 of the poses, although they took on only 2. So here's one, a couple more. This one has been dubbed the Wonder Woman by the media. Here are a couple more. So you can be standing or you can be sitting. And here are the low power poses. So you're folding up, you're making yourself small. This one is very low power. When you're touching your neck, you're really kind of protecting yourself. So this is what happens. They come in, they spit into a vial. We, for 2 minutes, say, you need to do this or this. They don't look at pictures of the poses. We don't want to prime them with the concept of power. We want them to be feeling power, right? So 2 minutes they do this. We then ask them, how powerful do you feel on a series of items? And then we give them an opportunity to gamble. And then we take another saliva sample. That's it. That's the whole experiment. So this is what we find. Risk tolerance, which is the gambling. What we find is that when you're in the high power pose condition, 86% of you will gamble. When you're in the low power pose condition, only 60%. And that's a pretty whopping significant difference. Here's what we find on testosterone. From their baseline when they come in, high-power people experience about a 20% increase, and low-power people experience about a 10% decrease. So again, 2 minutes and you get these changes. Here's what you get on cortisol. High-power people experience about a 25% decrease, and the low-power people experience about a 15% increase. So 2 minutes lead to these hormonal changes that configure your brain to basically be either assertive, confident, and comfortable, or really stress reactive, and feeling sort of shut down. And we've all had that feeling, right? So it seems that our nonverbals do govern how we think and feel about ourselves. So it's not just others, but it's also ourselves. Also, our bodies change our minds. But the next question, of course, is, can power posing for a few minutes really change your life in meaningful ways? So this is in the lab, it's this little task, it's just a couple of minutes. Where can you actually apply this, which we cared about, of course. And so we think it's really what matters, where you want to use this is evaluative situations, like social threat situations. Where are you being evaluated? Either by your friends, like for teenagers, it's at the lunchroom table. It could be, for some people, it's speaking at a school board meeting. It might be giving a pitch, or giving a talk like this, or doing a job interview. We decided that the one that most people could relate to, because most people had been through, was the job interview. So we published these findings, and the media are all over it, and they say, okay, so this is what you do when you go in for the job interview, right? So we were, of course, horrified and said, oh my God, no, that's not what we meant at all, for numerous reasons. No, don't do that. Again, this is not about you talking to other people, it's you talking to yourself. What do you do before you go into a job interview? You do this. Right? You're sitting down, you're looking at your iPhone or your Android, not trying to leave anyone out. You're looking at your notes, you're hunching up, making yourself small, when really what you should be doing maybe is this, like in the bathroom, right? Do that, find 2 minutes. So that's what we want to test, okay? So we bring people into a lab, and they do either high or low power poses again. They go through a very stressful job interview. It's 5 minutes long. They are being recorded, they're being judged also, and the judges are trained to give no nonverbal feedback. So they look like this. Like, imagine this is the person interviewing you. So for 5 minutes, nothing. And this is worse than being heckled. People hate this. It's what Marianne LaFrance calls standing in social quicksand. So this really spikes your cortisol. So this is the job interview we put them through because we really wanted to see what happened. We then have these coders look at these tapes, 4 of them. They're blind to the hypothesis, they're blind to the conditions. They have no idea who's been posing in what pose. And they end up looking at these sets of tapes and they say, oh, we want to hire these people, all the high power posers. We don't want to hire these people. We also evaluate these people much more positively overall. But what's driving it? It's not about the content of the speech. It's about the presence that they're bringing to the speech. We also, because we rate them on all these variables related to sort of competence, like how well structured is the speech? How good is it? What are their qualifications? No effect on those things. This is what's affected, these kinds of things. People are bringing their true selves, basically. They're bringing themselves. They bring their ideas, but as themselves, with no residue over them. So this is what's driving the effect or mediating the effect. So when I tell people about this, that our bodies change our minds and our minds can change our behavior and our behavior can change our outcomes, they say to me, it feels fake, right? So I said fake it till you make it. Like, it's not me. Like, I don't want to get there and then still feel like a fraud. I don't want to feel like an imposter. I don't want to get there only to feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And that really resonated with me because I want to tell you a little story about being an imposter and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. When I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. I was thrown out of a car, rolled several times. I was thrown from the car, and I woke up in a head injury rehab ward. And I had been withdrawn from college, and I learned that my IQ had dropped by 2 standard deviations, which was very traumatic. I knew my IQ because I had identified with being smart, and I had been called gifted as a child. So I'm taken out of college. I keep trying to go back. They say, you're not going to finish college. Like, just, there are other things for you to do, but that's not going to work out for you. So I really struggled with this. And I have to say, having your identity taken from you, your core identity, and for me it was being smart, having that taken from you, there's nothing that leaves you feeling more powerless than that. So I felt entirely powerless. I worked and worked and worked, and I got lucky and worked and got lucky and worked. Eventually, I graduated from college. It took me 4 years longer than my peers. And I convinced someone, my angel advisor, Susan Fisk, to take me on. And so I ended up at Princeton, and I was like, I am not supposed to be here. I am an imposter. And the night before my first year talk, and the first year talk at Princeton is a 20-minute talk to 20 people. That's it. I was so afraid of being found out the next day that I called her and said, I'm quitting. She was like, you are not quitting, because I took a gamble on you and you're staying. You're going to stay, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to fake it. You're going to do every talk that you ever get asked to do. You're just going to do it and do it and do it, even if you're terrified and just paralyzed and having an out-of-body experience until you have this moment where you say, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Like, I have become this. I am actually doing this. So that's what I did. 5 years in grad school. A few years, I'm at Northwestern. I moved to Harvard. I'm at Harvard. I'm not really thinking about it anymore, but for a long time I had been thinking, not supposed to be here, not supposed to be here. So the end of my first year at Harvard, a student who had not talked in class the entire semester, who I had said, look, you got to participate or else you're going to fail, came into my office. I really didn't know her at all. And she came in totally defeated, and she said, I'm not supposed to be here. And that was the moment for me, because 2 things happened. One was that I realized, oh my gosh, I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel that anymore, but she does, and I get that feeling. And the second was, she is supposed to be here. Like, she can fake it, she can become it. So I was like, yes, you are. You are supposed to be here, and tomorrow you're going to fake it, you're going to make yourself powerful, and, you're going to... And you're gonna go into the classroom and you are gonna give the best comment ever, you know? And she gave the best comment ever. And people turned around, they were like, oh my God, I didn't even notice her sitting there, you know? She comes back to me months later, and I realized that she had not just faked it till she made it, she had actually faked it till she became it. So she had changed. And so I want to say to you, don't fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it. You know, it's not do it enough until you actually become it and internalize. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. Tiny tweaks can lead to big changes. So this is 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Before you go into the next stressful evaluative situation, for 2 minutes, try doing this in the elevator, in a bathroom stall, at your desk behind closed doors. That's what you want to do. Configure your brain to cope the best in that situation. Get your testosterone up, get your cortisol down. Don't leave that situation feeling like, oh, I didn't show them who I am. Leave that situation feeling like, oh, I really feel like I got to say who I am and show who I am. So I want to ask you first, you know, both to try power posing, and also I want to ask you to share this science, because this is simple. I don't have ego involved in this. Give it away, like share it with people, because the people who can use it the most are the ones with no resources and no technology and no status and no power. Give it to them, because they can do it in private. They need their bodies, privacy, and 2 minutes, and it can significantly change the outcomes of their life. Thank you.
Andrew, you're on mute.
So yeah, sorry about that. It's an awesome story. I do like it. And I was just saying a few times that I've had to do public speaking on a stage and stuff. I have actually done this in the bathroom or on the way up to the stage, and you do feel good about it. So it's a fascinating thing. And I guess in all parts of our leadership, when we're going into a confronting situation, and certainly, you know, that would be women in council situations, which is really what the core of this course is about. There is some little tricks, and hopefully that's just another one to your portfolio that you can do to make yourself more equal on that stage. So I'm looking forward to seeing Trudy in the cafeteria at CSU tomorrow. I actually might not be there tomorrow, but I want to see you walking in doing a bit of a power pose, Trudy. Okay. So
Look, I will be there for a couple hours in the cafe, so I'll bust out a couple 2 minutes every now and again.
Yeah, there you go. Everyone be good. Excellent. Very good, guys. Thank you very much for sitting through that one. So the first little piece I've got tonight is about values. And the thing I find about values is that we often don't value the values that we have. And when we find other people standing on our values, then we get into a really awkward space, and it can stop us from functioning very well. It can make us feel very nervous about different things. And we sometimes, and I guess we've got Jessica Hittman coming up next week, which is about being an upstander. We need to really stand up for our values, and our values give us that extra level of confidence as well around different things that are going on in the world. So each of our values are unique, and I'm going to ask you guys to choose some words in a second that represent the values you've got, and we'll just punch them up on the screen here, and so we can see what's going on there. Just individual words about things that are important in your life as well. And they're unique to everybody. Everyone's got a different perspective on it. We've all had different childhoods and families and upbringings, and culture impacts values as well. We certainly see that playing out on a worldwide scale. The thing about the values, though, is that they help bring people together, and they help us understand, you know, when our decision making is really robust or when it's not, and I guess things like that. So it's an important thing for me, and I think that organizations often have values, and it's an interesting thing to see whether those organizations actually reflect those values as well. I think in an organizational setting, so a council probably has some values. Charles Sturt University has definitely got values as well. Do they reflect what actually happened in this space, or are they a bit of a motherhood statement, sort of lip service to the cause as well? So values are interesting for us. And as a leader, we want to kind of know what those things are so we can reflect them in our actions, our decision making, how we communicate, how we treat other people, and lots of things like that. I'm just going to pull the screen out of full view there. Who's got some words which describe things that are important in their lives that we can just punch up to get a portfolio of words there? I've got some words on the next slide as well that we've collected in other groups where we've done this particular exercise, but I'm interested to see what's important to you guys.
Honesty.
That's what I was going to say too, Michelle.
Cool, let's pop that one in. So honesty, and we've got integrity going on there as well. Very good. And this is where you learn that I didn't go to a very good school. Actually, I probably went to quite good schools. I was maybe not paying attention at the time though. Resilience, beautiful. Reliability. Cool. What's got the adventure? It's good too.
Perseverance.
Perseverance, a nice one too. Focus, good work. I think I got all those over the list there too. So resilience, kind of time, courage, perfect. So we're going to talk about that one further tonight as well, which is good. I'm going to add a couple of mine on here too. So trust is really important for me, and transparency is something that I do appreciate and like. And what happens when I don't get transparency, and I suppose even the council thing a little bit around the SRV and stuff like that, there's a lot of lack of transparency in that, and what that does is put the bristles up on the back of my neck, and so it makes me more reactive to the things that happen in that space. Whereas if you have a good relation with someone and you talk things through and you work things out, things flow much better, because there's a little, in my case, it's about transparency for different things also. The other one for me, the trust thing, I kind of expect and come to nearly any meeting with a trusting instinct, but if you get kind of burned on that, or you don't feel it's reciprocated, also it makes you quite standoffish about different things, and then makes you worry about the decisions you've made, maybe the vulnerability you've shown to people, and all of those kind of things. Let's have a bit of a chat. Tell me about courage, Nicole? Maybe how does courage play out in your world?
My business is around bullying and sexual harassment. So my role is founder and chief courage officer. So I give people the courage to know what to do and to stand up for themselves and know what to say in tricky situations.
Excellent. And it's great to have it in your job title. I like that. I like
Yeah.
about it. And I guess what you're kind of campaigning against is the absence of courage,
Yeah.
because that's where things go unseen, or things go badly for different people and those kind of things. So it's a good one as well. And the flip side's about that, and I'm going to choose the perseverance one for that one too, is or even the resilience one would work on that too, is when we don't see resilience. We appreciate resilience, we like resilience, and we want to see that. But when we don't see it, we might choose to not be as complimentary to people, or maybe a little bit even judgmental about people who are maybe not having a crack, or you should try harder in this case to do that as well. So values are kind of a bit pivotal around different things that we might work on. Reliability. Who had reliability in there? I think two people had that. So Trudy, maybe that was you. How does reliability
Yeah, I had
play
that.
out in your world?
Oh, look, I guess it's just do what you say you're going to do, and be someone that can be counted on to deliver. So it's always through work or personal lives. That's just been knowing that there's that, I guess, pillar of action and pillar of stability around.
Cool. Absolutely. And when you hire someone and you expect, well, reliability is a value of yours, and you hire them. We did this whole exercise with a bunch of dairy farmers. They have to hire quite a lot of people, and reliability, if you're going to milk at 4:30 in the morning, is a really, really big thing for them. So when they don't get reliability, it causes a lot of grief in the relationships they have with their staff, and it causes a lot of staff turnover and all those kind of things. Often, I think in this value space, we don't communicate our values as overtly as we probably should, or as explicitly as we should. And then when we don't do that, and maybe even if it's about the courage to call things out in Nicole's case, we get trampled on a bit, or it's quite easy to get trampled on by other people. So we should probably try harder to communicate our values more, stick with our values. And when we're doing, like Trudy said, when we're doing things, let's demonstrate reliability, let's demonstrate perseverance, let's demonstrate focus, and make other people kind of look up and appreciate and even value those kind of aspects of our personal selves. Like it's very personal to you what your values are, and making those things happen, which is really good. I'm just going to go to the next slide there. Any other comments on any of those words you guys are thinking about in terms of values there? So this is just a bunch of words which have also come up in the same sort of exercise when we've done it for a couple of different groups as well. So there's a whole range of things that can be had in this space. But the thing about this is that when people start to tread on your values or not represent your values very well, then it causes grief, it causes breakdowns in relationships, it causes us to be angry about different things, which calls into account our emotional intelligence on different things as well. And so if we're able to communicate our values, maybe telegraph those or signpost those to the people we're dealing with better, then we can be pretty much sure of better outcomes in terms of the things that happen to us and work around us and sort of make that work out as well. So values, I think, are seriously important. I'm going to put a little box on that strengths guide about values when we get there. And I wanted to use this little example here. I'll just put that back to full screen for you. Just for anybody who would like to dive into this, who's got moments when their leadership is maybe not really shining for them, when they feel like things are going a bit pear-shaped in their life? Maybe it's just an uncomfortable feeling. Did you want to expand on that one, Michelle? Or
I think it comes out of me is in a feeling of inadequacy actually. Yeah. So
yeah, and why do you think that is? I can't remember what values did you write down for that one? Maybe no, you didn't write any values down there. I probably wrote it on the screen as well. Do you think it's
yeah,
somewhere
so
treading on a value for you?
mine honesty and fairness, perseverance, that kind of thing. Activation, like I'm an activator. I think potentially, and is that that inadequacy and that feeling of a lack of respect or understanding.
Yeah, there you go. And if you want honesty, your particular perspective, and I know you're an employer in town and all those kind of things, your perspective of honesty will be one view of honesty. Someone else will have a different view of that, again, depending on their upbringing, their lifestyle, where they're hanging out, a whole bunch of different things on that one as well. And when you get a gap between those things, and when you have an employee who says they're going to turn up, but then they don't turn up, or they take home a broken bag of food or whatever else it might be, it pulls into question that, and it can leave you feeling very uncomfortable about what's going on. And certainly in the dairy farmers' life, where we did a lot of work with this stuff, is they weren't very good at communicating what their values were, and yet they were surprised when other people trod on their values, and really they were uninformed about what the values were and what was expected. And so our advice to the dairy farmers we did that activity with, which was across Australia, was to do more in the job interview, possibly even in the way they advertised, to telegraph what the values they expected when you come onto a dairy farm to work the shifts, to do the hard hours and all the things that are involved in that particular life as well. Anyone else got an example about where they feel uncomfortable, maybe as a leader or in a work situation, that maybe I can drive an example back to the values in their world?
I guess for me, Andrew, I've been in leadership roles before, but I'm not now. And I think what really resonated with me from the first session that we had is where you said that part of this is being able to be that voice of positivity, or to speak from the back of the room to demonstrate leadership even when you're not officially in that role. So I know for me, when I probably feel the insecurity, would be big Zoom calls that we're in that I'm not an official leadership role, so how do I then speak up? My words won't count. So that's probably when I would feel uncomfortable. And I guess my values are really honesty and reliability and trustworthiness, and it would probably be feeling that I don't have faith in the current leadership, that I feel that they lack honesty and transparency in those sort of elements, and that then reflects back on my own insecurity. Would probably be how.
So it's a great example too. So that means it's where you have to become the kind of warrior for the things that can make a difference. And you can start with your team, the people you work with more immediately. You can, it's difficult. And in your environment, when you said you're on a big Zoom call, it's very competitive in the university sector, isn't it? Like there's lots of people who want to get their voice up before other people do. So there's that aspect of it going on. we can't change the world overnight, and lots of people have probably tried, but starting close to home with the people you work with, the people you socialize with in that work environment can have a big deal. And again, telegraphing your expectations around honesty or reliability or particular other behaviors which you have grown to love and to cherish, I suppose, at the end of the day, can really have an impact on how you move forward in any kind of leadership role, or stepping up into leadership roles as well. So I do like that. We're going to keep sliding on. Thank you. Hopefully there's a few bits on values there which you can reflect on and think about how you take that forward also as part of your strengths and fake it till you make it package, as it might be as well tonight. We're doing quite a bit on decision making at the moment as well in different leadership courses that we're doing, so it was really useful to have a bit of a chat here. One of the things we often expect our leaders to do quite well is to be very decisive people, and certainly historically leaders who have appeared to have done well have probably been promoted a lot because they've been quite decisive in the way they do things. So there's an issue there that is probably not necessarily ringing true, and some of those decision-making leaders are probably making decisions which are maybe not as widely adopted as they ultimately should be for different people as well. But we do have high expectations from the people that we perceive to be leaders around us on what they will do around decision-making. So it's a really interesting space to see how they go about that. And certainly other people looking at you, and as you are in or moving into different leadership roles, etc., they're going to be looking for a lead on decision-making. I think I've got a piece on agile decision-making on the next slide or something like that. And these days that would be very much about getting people around the kind of campfire to help make decisions as well, rather than dictating or being quite, dictatorial in decision-making as it might be as well. Decision-making is about reducing alternatives to one, so we can move forward from that as well. If we've got multiple alternatives, that's a really good thing to have. If we've only got one thing to do, the decision is pretty much straightforward. And that's good. Well, it's good and bad, because the decision, if we've only got limited options, might be not the right decision for the situation we're in at this particular time. So again, we look to ways to get ourselves more alternative. And when we talk about agility and iterative and collaborative decision-making, we're looking to generate more and more alternatives to go forward. I think this rings for me particularly around, again, the council thing, which has just been on my mind again this week as well, that the decisions, real or otherwise, appear to be made in isolation of many, many other factors that are going on. So that would lead to potentially, and it may or may not be true, but it leads to the perception that the decisions are not suitable for communities or budgets or other things that are going on as well. A couple of other things I discovered just in the last couple of months or so too. It was about being a procrastinator. I'm a first-class 100% procrastinator. I've got 1,000 things I can do before I make a decision or do a job or whatever it might be. And working from home has only made that worse, because there's lawns to mow, washing to be done, cars to fix, paddocks to go and look at, whatever it might be. But actually, a few people, I think James Clear was one of them, talk about procrastination being actually a great timing device, where you're absorbing more information, you're reflecting on the problems that you have in front of you, and you're likely to come up with a better response through some level of time spent on the decision making, rather than having to rush in and action it straight away. The example that I did hear about is, even if you wait, as simple, if you're in a meeting, you're conducting a meeting with other people, if you give people at least 3 seconds to respond, the quality of the answers they will give after 3 seconds will be superior to answers they would give if they're just shooting from the hip and first one in gets the prize, as it would be as well. And truth about that, I suppose, is when you watch game shows, we've got a bit of hard quiz going on at our place these days, and they use a timer to make sure people have to jump in. And they're hoping that people jump in with the wrong answer, because then they lose points. That makes the game more interesting. If they had as much time to think about responses as they could all the time, there'd be far less error in that. So it's great for TV, but quick decision-making is often very difficult for people to get done. In decisions, our organizations, maybe our clients, also pitch decisions as very binary, black or white, yes or no. You only have one option. This is the only way to go with that. But it turns out nearly in every case, we have multiple ways to solve problems, and we should try to address those wherever we can. And again, in your leadership style, bringing people again, driving them towards the goal, this really speaks to higher quality decisions, because we've got more input into what's going on. The other part about the binary decisions is that people want them urgently as well. So they want, oh, yes or no now, make a decision quite now. So like you're in the restaurant and you have to order immediately. Well, actually, you can take some more time if that's going to improve the quality of the decision you're going to make as well. A couple of things. There's a great link there, the Decision Lab. That gives you about 100 different biases, or we might call them heuristics, that people make. And there is hundreds of them, quite literally. These are things that permeate how we make decisions. There's one called recency. So if we might have just watched the news tonight before we started the show, and I'm just trying to think what was on the news, I didn't pay attention too much. But it might be, let's say it's a cold day, and in Bathurst it definitely was a cold day today. So we might perceive everything from it's a cold day kind of perspective. So we have stuff about what we heard last makes us make decisions based on that most recent piece of information. Actually, if we looked at the climate over a long period of time, we might make quite different decisions about how that's going to work out and what's going to happen in that space as well. So check out that link, the Decision Lab one. There's lots of stuff to do there. Bounded rationality is where we mostly come from in terms of decision making. And again, I think in the council space, there's probably quite a bit of this going on with different people. So people come to decisions with limited knowledge. Part of that's caused by the fact we're not necessarily dumb, though the second one talks to that a little bit, but we want a result now. We want something really fast. So we're not prepared to go looking for all the different options. If it doesn't show up on page one of a Google search, it doesn't exist. So we often frame our decisions on very limited knowledge. Cognitive capacity, we tend to be a bit lazy. So instead of doing some research ourselves, we might rely purely on Bing. Let's say we relied on Bing to get some information about some new product or service. Well, Bing doesn't really cover products and services made in Australia or available for Australia very well. So we might just limit our involvement in that decision making by limiting the tools we use to input for that as well. The last one is time limits, and we're often very much under pressure to solve problems quickly within a particular period of time. And likely some leaders that you've run into in life are renowned for their decision-making capability and their quick-fire decision-making. And I think that happens. I think it's been appreciated a lot more in the male space, where there's probably been a bit of opportunities to get away with it a bit more. But is it the right decision-making? And the bounded rationality thing speaks to the fact that we're actually, what's called satisficing rather than optimizing our decisions. So we're always making decisions which are not optimal as it would be, and really organisations particularly, and councils would be one example, university would be another examples, should be working harder to optimise their decision making and moving forward from that as well. Just a couple of things there. There's an awesome video from that lady, Nuala Walsh. It's a 2022 TED Talk as well. So I've got a fair few of those up my sleeve, but that is definitely worth a watch if you're interested in it. She talks a lot about reframing, and reframing is taking decisions which seem big, maybe insurmountable, we're time poor to make them or under time pressure to do them, and breaking them down into more manageable chunks to do different things. And again, if I was thinking about decision making in our local council area, they've got a project called Barn. It's a massive thing, $10 million budget, etc. They've had a go-kart track, which is a $5 million budget, but there's no solution yet. There is no solution to either of those particular things because they are too big to make. They haven't gone through the steps. They haven't reframed them in a way that the community sees that they have some kind of positive benefit for what's going on. So if you're moving into a leadership position for any organisation, let alone a council or style position, the reframing tool is a really valuable way to break things down, to get a bit more of a handle around it, and pitch yourself a way to move forward and to get things done. Down the bottom of the page there, we've just got a quick model, 7 stages. One of the things that we might face is understanding the actual problem we're making a decision about. And certainly everyone will be in a place where they continue to seem to have to make the same decision over and over again. And that's when we haven't defined the problem very well. And we need to get down to that kind of root cause analysis to see what's going on with that. And then we can solve that problem rather than the symptoms of a problem that might exist as well. So good starting point there. Alternatives, yep, we want to have alternatives, more the better, that fit the context of the problem we've got particularly. We can use something to kind of quantify which are the right decisions or the right alternatives to make. That might include some kind of risk analysis as well. That's all getting a bit, technical as well. We need to make decisions, because if we don't make the decisions, then the effort we've put into trying to solve the problem probably doesn't come to fruition as well. And the minute we implement the decision, we start to learn from actually what happened there. And again, we see organisations making big, audacious decisions about this and that, doing press releases about them, but then there's absolutely no follow-up. There's no responsibility for what happens next. There's no responsibility for the people who actually had to implement the decision but didn't know what the input to the decision was about. And that's really problematic for us as leaders and certainly from organizations. And so that focus on learning from decisions is a massive, massive important thing to think about and how we go forward. And we can help other people make decisions, and we can monitor that, and we can even watch other people's decision making and learn as we go forward on that front as well. So the last part for me tonight, before Ursula gets a Guernsey on the screen there, is about this growth mindset kind of concept. Growth mindset is a cool kind of ideology, I'd have to say. The lady who authored it is on the next slide. You'll be able to see that in a second as well. Growth mindset is stepping out of our comfort zone, I suppose, at the end of the day. Growth mindset is also the fake it till you make it kind of space. It's about experimenting. Down here, they talk about playful learning, curiosity, definitely a part of that one too, active listening so that we can take on as much information as possible to kind of move forward on where we are. But the opposite side of growth mindset is what we call a fixed mindset. And fixed mindset says that we're kind of stuck in the status quo, that we're not looking for new ways to solve problems. And in my view, for sure, organizations often kind of instill fixed mindsets because of the way they structure hierarchy, processes, routines. And so they can be quite hard to break out of that space as well. And I think even to Trudy's points there, being able to influence people who have, they've got the experience, they know how the organization works and stuff. They're dug in, they're committed to that because they're in that hierarchy and they don't really want to see it change too much. Whereas the growth mindset is definitely about how we can review the world from a different set of lenses to come up with different solutions to otherwise kind of vexing problems as well. This is just the links. Carol Dweck is the lady who was behind it all. There's an updated audio book, which I was listening to a couple of, maybe last year as well. It's very long at 10 hours. That's a lot of listening, but there's a few road trips in making that one happen. So fixed mindset. People who come to the world, or not the world, with a fixed mindset, and we all use a fixed mindset from time to time because fixed mindset gets stuff done for us. So for anybody here who's got kids going to school, for example, we're kind of using routines and, the way we do things around here to get the kids out of bed, into uniforms, out the door, off to school, backpack in hand, successfully. We don't want to reinvent that every day. And the growth mindset kind of view of that would be maybe, let's try a different breakfast today. Let's try a different bus route. And that would complicate some things which have just got to happen for us as well. But there's a few other things which fall underneath that, which are tricky for us as well. People perceive that they're either good at it or they're not. And it doesn't speak to effort that's being made. They just go, I'm good, I've got a natural talent in this space, or I'm not, and so I can't really learn. So it's shutting down the learning space as well. I'm frustrated to give up. I don't like to be challenged, and many people will have seen leaders around them who don't like to be challenged. They'll shut down communications, they'll change the subject, they'll move on, they'll close meetings, they'll do all sorts of things like that as well. They like to be praised though, because they have often a position of power, etc., to make that one work out for them as well. And they have a view that their abilities, which they sort of believe to be quite static, so they're born with it or they're not, dictate the way the world's going to unfold for them as well. And we know that all of us and all of you here tonight, everybody's learning something new, and you've demonstrated that kind of more growth mindset space by simply doing 6 hours over 6 weeks around this material as well. Nice Simon quote there. Things that matter are difficult. If you want to do things that matter, it's going to take effort. And so we want to dig in and to buck the system, to push your values harder, to be more upstanding, to have the courage to fight bullying and other bad behaviors is going to take some effort. And that's going to take new solutions, which is where the growth mindset can kind of help us as well. So these aspects about the growth mindset particularly, I can learn anything I want to. I think that's largely true. I might not get good at everything, but it's open slather in terms of if you want to put the effort in, you can probably get some outcomes in that space. When I'm frustrated, I persevere. So that perseverance popped up in our values just a little while ago as well. Very important for us as well. I want to challenge myself. So when Trudy's standing in the cafeteria at CSU tomorrow doing the pride pose, she'll be challenging herself and her colleagues around her. But we'll have a laugh about that and see. actually, I won't be there tomorrow, Trudy, so you'll be able to get away with not doing it probably in that space. When I fail, I learn. This is really big for growth mindset. And there's a group of people called growth hackers. They are digital startup people usually, and they focus on doing stuff very action orientated. But if they fail, they talk about failing fast or failing forward. So if you trip when you're running over, you're kind of failing forward. You're not going to hit the deck, but you're going to stumble, and you're going to learn to pick your feet up at the next turn whenever that's going to happen as well. So the growth mindset is a kind of valuable way to think about the world and a valuable way to grow your footprint and your kind of leadership capability as well. The last part about this deck for you here is this ability to switch. So as I mentioned, there's some places in your world that your fixed mindset gets you through stuff. We can also call it a closed mindset as well. It just does the business because we've got routines, we've got things that we don't have to think about. We don't want to spend too much cognitive energy on that. But when something unusual happens, when the world changes, maybe expectedly or unexpectedly, then we need to open up the options for us. And so we need to know when to transition to this space that is going to help us come up with solutions rather than sitting on our hands, withdraw, go to the minimalistic power poses as well, the powerless poses as it might be as well, and get things done. So in all of your work next week as you move forward, I'd be very interested to hear if you go into that meeting, which you've been into 100 times and is very boring and everyone in that room's in a fixed mindset, where can you shine a light with some new ideas, new ways to do things, a new agenda, a new format, and use something or other to get a different outcome to what you got this week before and that week before that and the week before that, which everyone's very, very bored with as well. So think about opportunities in your own world where you can apply that growth mindset moving forward. I think I talked about fail fast, etc. as well. There's a couple of points on this slide which I like when they talk about in the growth mindset space as well. Is your brain playing old tunes? So I know Michelle quite well. She might have a few Anne Murray tracks floating around in there. Is that true or false? Maybe not. That's a bit rough. Sorry about that. I think the old tunes are, this is the way I do things. This is how it happens. And we're living sort of in the past about that because we've got the tunes which were, you know, our teenage life or our way we did things around here or whatever it might be. And we haven't kind of moved on from that too. The second one is the brain telling you the right story or a story that you're comfortable with. And that really fits in with the, I think it's a Far Side comment about inconvenient truths and comfortable lies, is it? I think that's the two boxes for that. So inconvenient truths and comfortable lies that might be there as well. So is your brain actually helping you know what you need to do? And I think actually probably for Nicole's thing, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in that kind of bully space as well. And lots of people prefer to sit on their hands about it because it's a confronting issue in some of those spaces. And so your brain might be comfortable, oh, yeah, that goes on around here. It's been going on for years, so I don't really need to do much for it. But stepping up, calling out could be a growth mindset application space for everybody as well. Perfect. There you go. So I've probably talked too much there. Thank you very much for that. I'm feeling much better having spoken a lot tonight too as well. I wanted to introduce Ursula, who's been sitting there. And I'm not really big for big introductions, but I'm fascinated by Ursula because we've worked together in Sydney, did a lot of teaching ages ago, and we're talking about that, I think, around the time Steve Irwin died, because I remember Twitter was pretty new then, and we found out Steve Irwin died on Twitter, and the Stingray, and you were talking about that this afternoon as well. So Ursula's been on a journey. She's going to talk to us about that. She spends a lot of time these days. She's actually just writing a Women in Leadership course for Department of Agriculture, which is going to really enhance their capability for a organisation which these days has to employ and does have lots and lots of women in it as well. There's lots of fascinating things about Ursula, but the round the world yacht race that Ursula went on blows me away. And the picture there is a picture of Ursula on the yacht in the middle of some ocean somewhere, which I like the water and I like the boat thing, but being out there so isolated, I would find that crushing. That would crush me quite literally. So I'm going to hand you over to Ursula. She's going to talk about some of the stuff in her life, and she's going to tell us how she lived and survived and how she felt when some of those things were going on in her life. So welcome, Ursula. It's all yours.
Wow, I thought you were going to go and ask me some questions, Andrew, so that I can respond. I didn't think I was here to talk, but all right. Thank you. Thank you very
I've
much.
got the questions on the other side if you like, but did you want to, you can start off with that story you told me this afternoon. That is a great, awesome story. And then we'll pick up with some questions after that if you like.
All right, let's do that. Thank you so much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to share my story. And my story actually is a little bit of a piece that I use very often in my leadership courses, and it has a lot to do with how we look at life and how we approach things in life. And sometimes when I look back at my life, I can't even imagine that I was in a place where I was at that stage. Let me start with how this all came about, that I went and sailed around the world. So I was actually quite a bookworm, an academic, and worked really incredibly hard on my PhD for a long period of time. Moved from, as you can hear, from South Africa, from my accent. I completed my PhD in 2004, and I had some external examiners in the US who then headhunted me to take up a role as an academic at the University of Maryland. And that's a top school in my field of study. And I took the role on, but my husband at that time stayed behind, decided to, about 2 months before we left, and just said he just couldn't do it because he didn't have a visa and wanted to finish his studies. So I went on my own, and we had this Skype relationship and spoke every day. And typical of these types of jobs, as I walked into the University of Maryland, coming from South Africa, doing a stint of work here and then moving there, I really felt like an imposter. And that woman that was talking at the TED Talk, that feeling of, oh my gosh, somebody's going to discover someday that I don't really know as much as I seem to be, or what they think I know. So I worked incredibly hard. I had my face in the books all the time. And even when I was in Australia, when we just came here, the same thing. I just worked incredibly hard, studying, writing papers, doing research. And I was probably, just very, very scared to be found out. So I had serious imposter syndrome. And one day we were talking on this call, and my husband knew that I liked Steve Irwin very much, and he said he had bad news for me, and he said he had died. And I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. And I said, how did that happen? And I was actually quite teary. And he mentioned that Steve had died from stingrays. And I stopped crying and I said, oh, okay, well, that actually makes me feel a little bit better. And I said, at least he died doing something that he really loved and that he was passionate about. And my husband at that point said he was quite surprised, and he said, that was quite a change of emotions. What was that all about? And I said, well, I just feel that, you know, if somebody dies doing something that they're really passionate about and that they do as something special in their life, it's not as bad as being killed by a car or cancer or something like that. Anyway, he was quiet for a little bit, and then he said, so if I die in a paragliding accident, wouldn't that upset you? And I said, well, obviously I'd be upset, but I wouldn't be as upset as if you died in any other circumstance. And he said, so what does that mean? How are you going to die one day, Cooks? Are you going to die with a book against your head or something like that? And I was like, oh my gosh, is that really how he sees me? Is that how the world sees me? That I'm such a, I just thought, wow, I wanted more for myself in my world, in my life. And that's actually quite a boring life for me. And I knew that deep inside, there was a lot more to me than just being with my head in the books. And it really changed my perspective of thinking, how do people see me? Anyway, that really stayed in the back of my mind and was something that really bothered me for a long, long time. Sorry for my long story, but I really have to paint this picture to you so you can understand where the actual story is going. Well, we eventually split up, which was quite wasn't something that I wanted, and it really actually devastated me. And together with that, my dad died was dying of cancer. He was really very sick. I couldn't be in South Africa with him. I couldn't be with my family. I went into early menopause at that point, and I realized I would never be able to have kids, which was quite a big feeling of loss that I experienced at that time in my life. When I came back, I started working for IBM, and I worked for the CEO, where I was his communication manager and speechwriter. And the stress of that job was absolutely overwhelming. I worked nights, I worked right through weekends to try and really just impress him, I think, but also to really do my best in the role. I also published, I kept on doing research. I taught MBA. You get the picture. I was overwhelmed by everything, and I absolutely broke down. And I'm talking really seriously, completely depression. I actually started becoming quite suicidal. The loss was overwhelming at that point as well. And if I think about it now, it's actually quite surprising to me that I went so low in my life and that I had so little resilience left in me. Anyway, in that whole process, one day I saw a little note on Facebook, and it just said, it's weird how these things happen, just said, you can break down a woman temporarily, but a real woman would pick herself up, rebuild herself, and come back stronger than ever. And I thought, hey, come on. You teach change management. You're in that field. You can do better than this. You can do something to change your world and change your mindset and change the way that you think. But I knew that I had to do something big, something that would take me out of my comfort zone completely. And I had to make a drastic change. One day on the train, I was going to work to IBM, lots of people standing around me with their breath in my face. And I was just realizing I need to get away from this. And there was this sign up on the train station at Waverton, and it just said, the Clipper 1314 race, 12 new boats, 40,000 nautical miles, one global race, raced by people like you. It was in big letters all across this board. And I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And it was really, I come from Johannesburg, guys. I lived in the middle of a country. I've never sailed in my life before. And I decided suddenly I'm just going to race around the world. It was probably the most ignorant, stupidest decision that I could have made at that stage in my life. I didn't have the money. I was completely broke. I was very sad. I was broken. And I just wanted the hurt to go away. And I would do anything just to get away from where I was. So I did that. I sold my car, took up 3 part-time jobs. I took a voluntary redundancy. My mortgage broker helped me to mortgage up to my absolute maximum. And that's what I did. So fast forward, I eventually ended up on this boat. There were 12 boats, sailed around the world, 20 people on each boat. You didn't know who you would end up with on a boat, and you spent a year with them on that boat. And I can tell you, every time when there were 8 legs, every time when a new leg started, I had to force myself to get on that boat. I was scared of all the consequences of the mental challenges, the physical challenges. There was so many challenges, the emotional challenges, living on a small boat with people. There was one day a guy who came out and said to me, "You don't know what you're doing." And I said, "What is your problem with me?" And he just said, "I just don't like you." So if you have those kind of situations, there's so much that you have to deal with. So there was a lot going on. Anyway, I remember specifically the leg of the Southern Ocean and how I felt walking to the boat on that day when we started that race. Now, the Southern Ocean, there are pieces in the Southern Ocean that are further away from, or closer to the closest satellite station than what it is to land. That's how remote it is there. If you get hurt on that boat, it will take a week or longer for somebody to get to you to help you out. So it was very, very scary. And we knew that the hurricanes in the Southern Ocean are incredible. So I remember really being yeah, just the fear was quite overwhelming. We went into this one hurricane. We knew what the wind predictions and the rain predictions were. And I remember that moment, and that photo that you saw, that you can see on the screen there, the wave behind the helmsman there, in that specific hurricane in the Southern Ocean, the waves were as high as the mast of that boat. It was really quite terrifying in so many different ways. The wind, I don't know if anybody has ever experienced a hurricane wind. This noise is so overwhelming. You can't believe that you can't hear anybody. There were 4 of us on the deck on that specific day. The rest were down below. And the rain came from the front. You see that yellow thing of our hoodie that we were wearing, our protective gear. You pulled it right over your eyes just to protect yourself from the rain that came horizontally into your face. And we then had to, in the middle of that storm, we had to go to the front of the boat to take the jib sail down. And the mainsail was already down. We had to put the storm sail up, and we moved with our tethers on the jackstay to the front of the boat. It took me, or us as a group, we were only the 4 of us, over a half an hour to get to just the front of that boat, as we tried to put the one half of the tether over the other one to slowly move ourselves. But the worst thing was that the boat, as it went up over the wave, it then, when it went came down it, the next wave came and went over the boat. So you kind of reached up to get a breath, and then as it came out of the water, you slammed down on the deck again. And then again, you saw the next one coming, and you would just try and get your breath as you went up into the water, and then it just slammed you down again. And I remember at that moment going, oh my God, I think I couldn't breathe. It was absolutely tears running down my face. I was shaking. I was so, and I was so cold. I was shivering as well. And I just thought, this is it. I think today I'm going to die. I was terrified. And I was saying to myself, oh my God, this is actually how I'm going to die. And that little Steve Irwin story came into my mind. And I thought, this isn't a book against my head. This is the middle of the Southern Ocean with my crew, with the most incredible storm around me. And I remember thinking, wow, this is the most wonderful way to die. But suddenly that mindset changed me completely to go, actually, this is the most wonderful way to live. And I remember that mindset changing my whole world. And I think that was an experience that the blue of the sea, the exhilaration of the drama all around me changed to something that was the most beautiful storm. It wasn't, the storm didn't change, but my mindset changed that day. And since that day where I really realized what a big difference a mindset could make, I constantly kept on pushing myself outside of my comfort zone in my life. Even last year, I decided, without really preparing myself properly for it, I went and cycled from Nairobi to Kilimanjaro, to Dar es Salaam for 560 kilometers. And then after that, just went and climbed Kilimanjaro, something that I'm talking about it as if just, but it was really pushing myself again out of my comfort zone. And I constantly like doing that because it really makes me realize how stepping outside of your comfort zone, where fear is such an important thing, but that if you can manage to overcome it, that the magic happens when that courage overcomes that fear or outweighs that fear. And that is something that I teach when I do leadership training, is to help people understand that the fears that you have about not being enough, not being good enough, not doubting yourself, not putting your confidence into what you do, those fears, if you have the courage to consistently overcome them by just doing it, by just faking it or making it happen, is when you actually become resilient. And yeah, that's my story. That's what I what I live and what I teach in my leadership coaching, but also the way that I lived after that when I was in leadership positions. So that's my story. Thank you for being so patient and listening to it. Thanks, Andrew. I have a little video clip if you would like me to play that of that storm and what that looks like. Would you like to see that? I can share my screen.
I'm going to make you a host there.
Okay. Let's see if it works, and let me know if the video works, if the sound works. Can you hear the sound?
Not yet, and don't have a picture yet too. You might still have to do more to share your screen.
I think I have to say share sound. Okay, let me do that.
Oh yeah, actually, when you go to share screen, there's a button
Yeah.
at the bottom now. Turn that on.
Oh, it wants me to give my password. I don't think it's going to work, Andrew.
Maybe we can get a link to it later and pop it in across the Facebook page if you're happy to share it that way.
Yeah, I'll do that.
If we can't get to it right now, that'd be good too. I got a couple of questions for you too, and like that's
Sure.
massive, and it's a great story. Everyone has their moments, different moments of what fear is going to look like and what's going to come to your way on that front. So I think that's good. So we all have different triggers to start us on that journey, which I think is pretty cool. What sort of things, you've had lots of leadership roles, you're teaching leadership, you're mentoring people in leadership for sure. What sort of advice would you offer to people in this course here about, that stepping up maybe, or what, where's the best place to start this journey maybe?
I actually, I was preparing a lecture today, and I think some of the most, some of the best stories come from people who are or took up leadership roles. And I was looking at Jacinta Ardern and when she did, and how she approached her leadership journey. And I think there's a lot of lessons in what she did, and also in Brené Brown. But I think I have a few quotes here that she talked about, and she says, just want to get to it quickly. Leadership is not about necessarily being the loudest in the room, but instead being the bridge or the thing that is missing in the discussion and trying to build a consensus from there, which is very much based on her approach of being relationship focused rather than politically focused. So I think there was a lot of wisdom in that for me. That's one very important lesson that I think is important to take on. And then she was also talking a lot about coming back to confidence. If you sit and wait to feel like you are the most confident person in the room, you're probably going to be left by yourself, because we all have a little bit of confidence that we lack and that we worry about. So I think that was a nice one for me. And then there was one other one that I just wanted to share that I think is so important. I think the one that is the most obvious one that she says, I really rebel against this idea that politics has to be a place full of ego and where you're constantly focused on scoring hits against each other. Yes, we need a robust democracy, but you can be strong and you can be kind. And it was very much related to her whole approach, where she's talked about being vulnerable and vulnerability not being seen as a strength. It's very often seen as a weakness, where her whole approach was being vulnerable is actually a strength. I think those are my most important lessons that I would love to share with this group.
Perfect. Really nice points there as well. And that's true. The vulnerability with kind of confidence or with boundaries as well is definitely a way to go. And yeah, that makes it super powerful. One of the other questions which I'd written down there, that was some advice maybe for everyone, I think, on that one too. What can men learn about women in leadership, or how can men support women in leadership better or not be fearful of them?
Yeah, I worked for the CEO that I was talking about, who I worked for at that point was Andrew Stevens. He's now heading he's the chair Champions of Change, which is the organization that looks at how men can support women in leadership roles and to help women actually build their leadership skills and not be held back by the limitations of systems and processes. And he talked a lot about building networks where we also include, where we have men and women, but women helping each other, because that's one of the things that very often happen, is that women rise above or not always take other women with them, or they see them as threats, or they don't really build those networks. But I think it's one of the most important aspects is to build networks where we help other women succeed, but also for men to help women succeed in leadership roles. I'm looking specifically now at women in leadership, but I think for men also to take on a role of building networks and supporting other people, so coaching other people, and that's the coach as the leader as a coach, which I think is a very important role to play. Hope that answers your question, Andrew.
Yeah, no, that's a nice one as well. I was reading some stuff from Simon Holmes Court, which is an interesting one for the men's situation. They did some research looking for men see other men as good blokes, and in the women's circle, there's no kind of equivalent to a good bloke to a good woman or a good girl. There's no whatever that value is. Oh, he's a good bloke, yeah, I'll vote for him, or he's a good bloke, he can get away with that. In the female circles, there's like an absence of that, and that's part of how they sort of crowdsourced their teal independence for the election a couple of years ago now. So it was a really interesting point about how that happens as well. Who else has got some questions for Ursula while she's here?
I really want to thank you for listening to my story. I often think, I just want to say, I tell it in a lot of humility, because I realize that I probably took an opportunity that not a lot of people can take in their lives, and it really changed my life. And I tell it as a way of inspiring people who might get to points in their life where they kind of don't always know where to go or what to do. But it's just to show the strength of mindset change and what that could do to your life. So I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to share that and being open to listening to my story.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much. I think there's a quote from the Dalai Lama about, you know, in the moments of your greatest fears is where you have the greatest learning as well. So
Yeah.
yours might have been in the Southern Ocean. For other people, it's around family or passings or all the other different things that we've talked about, a few of them, and other guest speakers have brought to the party as well. And instead of that being a threat to us all, it's an opportunity to be resilient and to bounce back from that, have a change of mindset and move forward. So I think that is awesome, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to Ursula and to my rantings, and Amy Cuddy's stories about power poses as well. I look forward to seeing many of them down the Safala Road for those who are a little bit more local to me. And yeah, we might wrap it up there. I'll just stop the recording, and then if we want to have any more Q&A, we can do that. So thank you very much, everybody.